live in Europe, the air you breathe, the water you drink, the meat or fish you eat, all of it is controlled in Brussels. But today, thanks to Brexit, the UK is in uncharted territory. 80% of its environmental rules derive from European laws, laws that have, over the past decade, played a leading role in protecting the environment. Britain's big clean-up of rivers, its improvement in air quality, yes, that's thanks to Brussels.
The EU's role has been to push the UK faster than it would have gone had it been outside the EU. There are, there's a clear public support for environmental improvement in the UK, probably to a higher level than the average in member states. But that support has needed the backing of European legislation to turn it into a reality.
So how could Brexit impact the environment? Well, the idea is that London will simply incorporate European laws into its own system, such as the precautionary principle, which protects citizens when there is a doubt over the dangers associated with a product or technology. But right now, the country has a blank page in front of it. Although last year, the government did promise a green Brexit.
Because we recognise their value, we will incorporate all existing EU environmental regulations into domestic law when we leave. And let me be very clear, Brexit will not mean a lowering of environmental standards.
Environmentalists, well, they're worried. And they've been scrutinising the Environment Bill, a crucial text which is supposed to turn tens of thousands of pages of European law into British law. But who will enforce it? And that's the problem, because that task used to fall to Europe, making sure that governments do what they say they will do. London has already had a warning from the EU in 2018 for non-compliance with air quality standards. Now, in a post-Brexit world, this would be the job of a new agency to be named the Office for Environmental Protection. But if this green watchdog is not totally independent of the environment, will it have any teeth?
The proposed watchdog that the government plans to set up in the UK after Brexit currently is not proposed to be independent. It's not proposed to have adequate funding as far as we're concerned, and it definitely isn't going to have the power to take the government to the courts in the same way and to issue those fines.
It's a fear that was reiterated in a report put together by a cross-party committee of British MPs in April this year. In it, they warn clearly that current proposals to replace EU policies fall, quote, woefully short. So can we trust the UK without the pressure from Europe? To be fair, until now, Britain had been on the right track. Previously considered the dirty man of Europe, the UK has reduced its CO2 emissions by 38% between 1990 and now, faster than any other major developed country. How? Largely by reducing its electricity consumption and turning away from coal. But it's still far from perfect. The young Swedish activist Greta Thunberg quick to point out Britain's contradictions in front of the Parliament during a visit to London.
The UK's active current support of new exploitations of fossil fuels, like for example the UK shale gas fracking industry, the expansion of airports, as well as the planning permission for a brand new coal mine, is beyond absurd.
Another problem is that the UK Conservative government already has a lot on its plate with Brexit. And while the environment, it's not #1 priority. It needs time and it may not have it. If the UK leaves Europe without an agreement, the famous no-deal scenario, well then all EU environmental laws will disappear overnight. A leap into the unknown. A catastrophic scenario that the country would avoid with a deal. It would then have until the end of 2020 to step in when the European authorities step out.
Mechanically, the UK leaving the European Union makes it harder for the European Union to meet its existing commitments. Relatively speaking, the UK was more ambitious than the average of European member states. For instance, currently, the EU has an objective of reducing its emissions by 40% by 2030. By following its domestic legislation, the UK has an objective of reducing them by 57%. So mechanically, the UK leaving the EU makes it harder for the EU to achieve this existing commitment. It's very unlikely that the UK will go rogue on environmental and climate issues. It's not in its own interest because the UK public demands high standards in terms of environment and climate change. There have been a lot of civil society mobilization, Extinction Rebellion, protests from the youth movement, which make this very unlikely.
Whether you're in favour of Brexit or not, one point should be unanimous. The environment must not be a victim of the UK's withdrawal from Europe.